Hey everybody, Jazzy here. After about 1500 days of playing Warly on my solo Twitch Don't Starve Together world, I figured it was high time I make some specific guides on how to play as Warly. So today I want to start with how to manage his hunger in the early game. Now Warly has a few challenges when it comes to eating. First, he will only eat crockpot food. Nothing raw or cooked is ever an option, so he will be married to his portable crockpot for a while. The second obstacle is really unique. He remembers meals that he has eaten for 2 days, and any meals repeated within that time will be gradually less and less effective. To compound the problem, eating a repeat dish will reset Warly's memory, so the only way to forget a dish is to not eat it for 2 whole days. I figured my best way to discuss my hunger strategy with Warly was to revisit the very first autumn and winter of Thrill of the Grill, and just take you meal by meal through the earliest days of the run. That way you get to see some of these strategies in action, and hopefully understand why I made certain choices in the game. So let's get started. When you start as Warly, you spawn in with 2 potatoes and a garlic. Many players take that as a sign that creamy potato puree should be your first meal. Here's the thing. With those 2 potatoes, you can make 2 fancy spiraled tubers, which give Warly almost twice the hunger of a single puree. You're not really hurting for sanity or healing on day 1, so I would grab a few berries and twigs and put those potatoes to better use. For the early exploration, you'll notice that I will generally travel around with 3 main ingredients: monster meat, large meat, and carrots. If I want juicy berries or butterfly wings for filler, I'll harvest them only when needed since they spoil fast. I could have grabbed some early large meat from the tallbird nests in the Mosaic biome, which usually generates right next to spawn. Instead, I opted to go on a koala hunt. This is an excellent way to get lots of large meat early on, and I'm all for hunting in the early days while the chance of a surprise Varg is much lower. The first meal of the run is going to be 2 potato tubers and 2 meatballs, which will restore 190 hunger. Warly likes to eat to get full, because after 2 days of no eating, he will have forgotten everything and be ready to slam another big meal. A Warly with a full belly can last almost 3 days before he starts starving. So, Jazzy's big secret to surviving as Warly is to get him completely full and then don't eat again for at least 2 days. That way you never really need to worry about his meal memory. An easy way to keep track of it is just to watch his hunger. He drains 90 hunger per day, so when he goes from full all the way down to 70, you can assume his memory is emptied like Maman's. Day 4, we eat our first meaty stew. His hunger was around 95, so the stew will basically top us off. Day 5, we find vault goats in the oasis, so I'm killing a few for some meat. Now, even though large meat is not as prevalent as monster meat, there are still tons of good sources for it in almost every biome on the surface. Vault goats in the oasis, pigs in every forest, catcoons in the deciduous, tallbirds in the mosaic and rocky biomes, and, of course, beefalo in the savanna. Not to mention the koalas, which leave suspicious dirt piles everywhere. All of these sources are available in winter as well. Large meat is really not a rare food item, you just gotta understand how to harvest it. Day 6, I took some damage, so I'm looking to heal. There are a few early game dishes available for healing, but right here I'm going to make spicy chili. This dish is really underrated because it only needs 1.5 meat and 1.5 veggies, and I can make it from the same foods I use to make my hunger dishes. No extra ingredients required. It's not the most efficient dish, but in the early game I am more than happy to compromise based on the foods I have on hand, especially if I don't need to dedicate more inventory slots to additional ingredients. Day 7, I am really starting to slam meaty stew. If I eat 2 when I'm starving, then I'm completely topped off, and I don't have to think about eating again for almost 3 days. You'll see me slamming a lot of double meaty stews. If I wanted to be really efficient about it, then I'd eat 1 when starving, wait for my hunger to hit 115, and then eat the second stew to fill up completely. I know that slamming them both at the same time wastes a little value, but for me it's worth not having to constantly check my hunger. Just eat to fill up, and don't think about food for a few days. Day 10, I took damage, so I'm smashing another spicy chili to heal. I also have a couple birch nuts in my inventory, so I'm gonna cook some trail mix. The easiest recipe for this is a roasted birch nut, 2 berries, and a twig. Easy, 30 health. Uncooked birch nuts last a long time, and you can easily cook a few up when you need healing. Day 11 is another double meaty stew. If you find yourself with lots of monster meat early on and less large meat, consider converting a pig by feeding them 4 monster meat. Werepigs drop a guaranteed pig skin and 2 large meat, so it's a worthwhile conversion rate for monster meat. The second half of autumn saw Warley eating a combination of meatballs and meaty stew for hunger, and trail mix for healing. Day 18, I had 2 meatballs, which put me just above 200 hunger. So next time I'm starving, the memory will be wiped. If you wanted to eat a meaty stew plus meatballs when your hunger gets low, you can restore 212.5 hunger, which will last you through those 2 days of food memory. I started winter with an icebox containing a decent amount of meat, and for the majority of winter, the double meaty stew was my go-to meal. I did save a few birch nuts for autumn, so I made a handful of trail mix for the early winter Mac Tusk fighting. Honestly, I should have saved up some more because they last so long in winter and are some of the cheapest healing you will find. Day 25, I goofed, and I ate a meaty stew before his memory got wiped. Do not listen to Warley when he starts complaining about being hungry, especially if you ate to get full from the last meal. Because in that moment where he asks for food, whatever you ate for that last meal, he will still remember for like another third of a day. One of the few things I really appreciate about Wes is that he won't start bitching when he's hungry. But yeah, most of the time I try my hardest to just ignore Warley's complaints until the red cloud of starvation just covers the world. Once I set up a bird cage, I made a handful of pierogies for the winter boss fights. I ate one during Kloss, but I managed to avoid taking too much damage during the fight, so I had most of it left over. So I saved them for tanking Klops on day 30. I ate one pierogi halfway through the fight, and afterwards I ate a jelly bean. Yeah, I got some royal jelly from Kloss. It was pretty nice loot. If I didn't have the jelly, I would have just eaten 2 more pierogies. The second one would restore 38 health, and the third would restore 32, so it's totally fine to repeat a few times. In general, the penalty doesn't really start to fall off until the 4th dish, but the first 3 won't penalize you too badly. Day 32, I had some filler that was about to spoil, so I decided to make a few meatballs. Now, here's the deal with Warley and meatballs. If Warley is only eating meatballs, then the only way to provide enough hunger to get through the 2 days of food memory is to eat 4 meatballs all at once, because they will provide 209 hunger. Eating less than that is not sustainable, because Warley will still remember the dish next time he is hungry. But here I'm making an exception, because I already have a bit of hunger and I calculated that 3 meatballs will get me back to full. So if I wanted to eat meatballs again next meal, I'll be fine as long as I wait for my hunger to drop below 70. And finishing off winter with another double meaty stew. That's it. Now, it was a fairly clean early game, all things considered. I did not take a whole lot of damage, so I was not cooking a massive amount of healing foods. I did keep a few healing salves in my inventory during winter, just as a backup. There are, however, a handful of healing items and dishes that I would highly recommend if you do find yourself taking substantial damage as Warley. So in the next guide, we'll talk about that. And I'm going to do it in a proper guide format because I didn't really present a big variety of healing dishes in this run. I just went with what was convenient at the time, but there's definitely other choices that I could have made. So until then, let me know what other information you are interested to see presented on Warley. I'm excited to share my experience on the character, who is really one of the more misunderstood and undervalued characters in Don't Starve Together. I hope that my Thrill of the Grill recaps and Warley guides help to illustrate his potential and demonstrate how his survival is not as complicated as one might think. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what your early game is like with Warley, and see you next time.